All right, today we're stepping into a truly beautiful and, I have to say, heart-wrenching piece of writing by Charles Lamb. It's a story that's woven from memory, from longing, and pure imagination, all told by a father to his children on a quiet evening by the fire.
And that's exactly how this story kicks off. Our narrator is sitting there with his two little ones, Alice and John, and they are just captivated, eager to hear all about their ancestors. So he starts with their great-grandmother Field, a figure from a past they can only dream of. So, the first character we meet in this family tapestry is great-grandmother Field. She lived in this incredible old house in Norfolk, a place just full of wonder and history that really sets the stage for all these memories.
And we're not just talking about any old house. This was a mansion, 100 times bigger than their own little home. It had this grand chimney piece carved with the entire story of the children in the wood. But a later owner, who the narrator calls foolish, just tore it down for a plain modern marble one with no stories on it at all. You can just feel the narrator's sense of loss for that little piece of history.
Now here's the thing about great-grandmother Field. She wasn't actually the owner of the manor. The real owner preferred to live somewhere more fashionable. But she was its soul. She cared for that house with so much dignity that she was loved and respected by literally everyone, rich and poor.
In her youth, she was apparently so graceful and vibrant, the best dancer in the whole county. But later in life, a cruel cancer took hold, and it left her stooped over with pain. And yet, while the illness could bend her body, it could never, ever touch her spirit. She stayed completely upright in her soul. Just an amazing testament to her strength. And get this, she was also a woman of immense faith. She slept all alone in this huge, lonely room and was convinced she would often see the ghosts of two little babies on the grand staircase. But instead of being scared, she was totally certain these innocents couldn't possibly harm her. The narrator admits that he, on the other hand, was absolutely terrified as a kid, even with his maid sleeping in the same room.
Okay, so now the story kind of shifts. We move into the narrator's own childhood memories of visiting that same great house during his holidays.
You see, he was a very solitary, imaginative kid. So instead of, doing normal kid stuff like picking nectarines and peaches, he found way more pleasure in what he calls these busy, idle diversions. He'd lose himself for hours just staring at the marble busts of Roman emperors until they seemed to come alive. Or he'd wander through these vast, empty rooms and the rambling old gardens. He was a boy who lived in his own rich, quiet world.
And here is where the tone of the whole story starts to change. The narrator starts telling his kids about their Uncle John, who great-grandmother Field loved in an especial manner. We're shifting away from simple nostalgia and into a place of fond but really, really sorrowful remembrance. I mean, these two brothers could not have been more different. While our narrator was the quiet, introspective one, moping about in solitary corners, his older brother John was handsome, spirited, bold, a true king, as he puts it, to the rest of them.
John was just bursting with life and adventure. He'd hop on the wildest horse and just gallop across the countryside, joining up with hunters. But his adventurous spirit didn't mean he didn't appreciate the old house. He just had way too much energy to be cooped up in it for long. But underneath all that spirit was this deep, deep kindness. The narrator reveals he was a lame-footed boy, and his big brother John would carry him on his back for miles and miles when he was in too much pain to walk. It's just such a tender, powerful picture of brotherly love.
But life, as it does, has this tragic symmetry. In a cruel twist, John himself became lame-footed later in life. And the narrator confesses this deep regret, that he wasn't always patient with his brother's pain, that he didn't always remember how kind John had once been to him. After John died, the loss haunted and haunted him. He missed everything, not just the kindness, but even his brother's crossness. He says he wished him alive again, even if it was just to argue with him. Anything, rather than the profound silence of him being gone. And you can imagine, this story about Uncle John becomes too much for the little ones. They start to cry, and they ask him to please stop. Instead,
They make this simple, heartbreaking request. Tell them stories about their pretty, dead mother. And just like that, the story turns from one great loss to another.
So he does. He starts to tell them the story of their mother, the fair Alice Wren. He tells them how he courted her for 7 long years, a time filled with hope and despair, with rejection and encouragement, a really long, difficult path to love.
But right as he's telling the story, something starts to feel off. The whole atmosphere shifts. That cozy fireside story starts to feel fragile, like it's dissolving, getting dreamlike. He looks over at his daughter, little Alice, and suddenly, it's not her eyes he sees. He sees the eyes of the first Alice, his lost love, looking right back at him. The resemblance is so perfect, so real, it just confuses him. Which Alice is this? Whose hair is this? And that vision is so powerful, it starts to break the spell of the dream.
And as he just stares, totally lost in this moment, the image of his children begins to dissolve. They get fainter and fainter, pulling back from him until they're just 2 sad little shapes way off in the distance. The dream is collapsing.
And now we get the devastating truth. The cozy fire, the listening children, none of it was real. It was all a dream.
Before they disappear completely, the children say one last heartbreaking thing. They tell him they are not his children and they are not Alice's. They are nothing. Less than nothing. They're just dreams. We are only what might have been.
And with that, he wakes up. He finds himself alone, sitting quietly in his bachelor armchair. There are no children. There is no wife. It was all a reverie, something his mind conjured up from pure longing. And the 2 great losses of his life, his love, Alice, and his brother John, are the stark, lonely realities that he wakes up to.
The narrator's ghosts were the people he lost, and the entire life he never got to live. And it leaves us with this question, doesn't it? What are the dreams, the memories, the what might have beens that we all carry? Which ghosts live in our own bachelor armchairs?